Welcome. My name is Frank Satterwhite, proud founder of 1600 Avenue. I am here with Darrell Booker. Really honored to have him with us tonight. His official title is Corporate Affairs Specialist at Microsoft, but really I would call him a change maker. So we're going to talk about some key things today regarding tech, how it affects our community, privacy, and then some tangible things that we can do to kind of move the ball forward to create more equity in tech. So Darrell,
yes.
Hello. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Thanks for being here today.
No, Frank, thanks for having me. I don't know, where do I start? Wow, at this point, going on 26 years in tech. So, a really long time. And, through those years, I've done quite a bit. Very much call myself a geek at heart and app and solutions developer. And, my career over the years has, taken me through quite a few industries. But some time ago, maybe 6-7 years ago, kind of devoted, what I learned from a technology standpoint and applying that to more impactful work, getting into the nonprofit space and saying, here's an industry that's really lacking in tech, like so many other verticals. So, how can I take all that knowledge that's up here that to me seems very easy to apply? Let's apply it to a particular vertical that's really missing from. So, that's a little bit about me and, just have the pleasure of being able to do this all day at a daily basis at Microsoft.
So I know you're applying that know-how through this Tech Accelerator program. We'll talk about that in just a second. But first, everybody kind of thinks that the journey is easy, right? It happens overnight. Things just line up for you. And the truth of the matter is, for me, as well as you, I'm sure, every step of the way was a challenge, probably. And so, go ahead. You can't wait to jump in. Right?
I'm like, trying to get on double desk. I'm just trying to get in there. It's definitely a challenge. And when I think of tech, even how I first started, and I tell people a lot of times, my passion was it when I chose to stay in the house and, sneak on my dad's computer instead of going outside in the heat during the middle of the summer and playing with my friends. It was that sacrifice. When I got older, it was like on that Friday night, people calling, hey, man, you going out? We're going to the club, whatever. And, I'm working on some little app and, it might not be anything I was getting paid for, but it was just, that passion in me to not get defeated by the technology and really learn it. But then also, too, just to be honest, to be, a Black man in America in a field where there's not much representation, that was a huge challenge and honestly still is. And, having to have a lot of thick skin, having to know your own self-worth, being resilient. I mean, the adjectives can go on and on. So, yeah, definitely not anything overnight whatsoever.
Right. And, I'm going to make this even more relatable. So I remember probably about, 15 years ago, being a nerd was not cool.
Not at all. Not at all. I used to hide being a nerd. So I know what you're talking about.
Listen, I was a nerd back then. I just didn't want people to call me a nerd back then. But what has happened with respect to my journey, and I think it's something people can relate to. I'm from California, went to UC Berkeley, was born in a place called East Palo Alto. It's an impoverished area in Silicon Valley. It was. And so during my journey, every time somebody said, well, Frank, maybe you're not good at it. Or Frank, maybe you don't belong at UC Berkeley. Or Frank, maybe you don't belong working for NATO. It's funny. Tupac, hip hop. I kind of listen to hip hop, and in hip hop, Tupac always said stuff like stick your chest out and handle your business. Culturally, I think there's a lot of young men that are inspired through music that can use that to kind of give them that extra push when the road gets a little harder. What would you say about that?
You've been stalking me or something, but that is me talking about, music and what it does. It's done a lot for me. It is definitely my getaway. Times when, I used to commute and going home from work and like I said, East Coast, I'm putting on Biggie, Jay-Z. And
right.
Yeah. And, just what it did for me for a lot of things, like, kept me grounded with my culture,
Yes.
because, I'm going to work 9 to 5. And especially in my younger days, before I was really comfortable in who I am in my skin. And it was like, I almost had to be a different person because, I looked different, but I couldn't act different too, having to fit in things. And so music does a lot. One more point to this, and I really, whenever I have the opportunity to talk about this, is even from a standpoint, I'm real big on mental health and mental wellness. For me, sometimes, even as a Black man, there's a lot of stigma around that. When I can listen to, hip hop and rap, and I hear artists who are not necessarily hiding behind their fame and saying, you know what, I'm going through something too.
Right.
That really helps me to be like, okay, I'm not alone. But yeah, man, music is key to staying sane.
You said a couple of key things that are really important for me. You said sometimes you had to feel like you were be a different person.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so we have a program with hip hop tech leaders. And so one of the things we're really trying to do, our nonprofit in California, is hip hop too, but tech can look like you, Darrell.
It can. Yeah.
It can look like me. It can look like our sisters. It can look like, the people we grew up with. It doesn't have to be a middle-aged white person with baggy pants and a frumpy shirt and the pocket pins, right?
Right. When you think about it, I remember I was speaking at a conference to marketers, and I'm saying at the end of the day, we're building products for diverse people. You follow me getting that? The consumers, you're looking at them and say, oh, we want everybody to buy our products. You know what I mean? But you don't want to bring that diverse workforce inside your walls.
Okay.
And that's baffling to me. You know what I mean?
I think you're stalking me because Darrell, really, what you just said, we have something I really believe in is social justice requires digital justice. So part of that digital justice is don't just have our communities consume tech. Have us be part of the producers of the tech. Bring us into the workforce, right? Yeah. Part of our mission, partner with organizations like SAP, is to make sure brown, Black, women, underserved communities have the skills so when the opportunity is there.
I think you hit on it. And I'm so glad you said what you said. You said make sure they have the skills. What you did not focus on was these corporations being more diverse and hiring. Both need to happen is what I'm getting at. Exactly. We can't, as a society, just say, okay, corporations, you need to do better than hiring. We need to make sure that we're coming to the table with the skills. That we need. Everybody owns a piece of that. And then, what we can control, if we can own it and make sure that we remove the narrative that there are not enough Black and brown skilled, then, we really put these corporations up against the wall to say, okay, we have no excuse now.
No, exactly. Yeah. Something, I did a little research. I quote, you said that the only way we're going to make change is this hyper focus at the community level. I'm sure you remember that. Mm-hmm. For 1600, community is our business, is actually our theme. Explain a little bit about what you meant by that.
Man. When I think of community, I'm really thinking at the hood level, the neighborhood level, the zip code level.
Exactly.
That is what I'm talking about. That's where you're in the trenches. And when I say you're in the trenches, that's where you live. That's where your kids go to school. That's where you play.
Exactly.
That is where you are. So I think anybody that is an adult really knows that we can't really rely on top-down improvement and in making it to your hood. You follow me?
Top-down never works.
Never works. And as much as
for brown and Black people, at least.
Exactly. So as much as we hope that at the government level they're doing things that are really impacting us, that's not the truth. Or if it is the truth, it's just not happening fast enough. People are dying. Sir. People are going hungry. People are losing jobs. People are homeless. Yes, so, sir. We have to switch the model and the thinking and saying, how do we provide support? How do we bring the cavalry for those that are in the hood that are really providing those services that can change your life immediately? That is what I really just focus on. And I'll kind of say this one other thing. When I think about, the racial reckoning that we as a country had last year, I really think about these are fixes that need to happen at the community level. You know yes, what I mean? Sir. When we look at all of the killings that happen and all these things that happen, the fix was at the community level. You follow what I'm getting at?
Yes, sir.
There is someone right now in Minnesota where George Floyd was killed that's in that neighborhood that would have said, I could have told you 2 years ago that was going to happen. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because that is where the root of these problems are. And until we really put our power behind those that are doing that great work at that level, we're going to be really struggling as a society for a long time to come.
Let me build on what you just said, because I have a passion for some of the things you've said, and I share some similar views. We're talking about the community level. Last summer, we had a conversation. It was really worldwide. I'm in Frankfurt, Germany. Okay. I work a lot of European, I'm a cyber expert. So people in Berlin were protesting about George Floyd and racial injustice. And so what happened last year is this conversation that only certain pockets of people would talk about became mainstream.
Right.
And so your point of really empowering in the community, the organizations on the front line to make change, I agree with that 100%. So when a Wells Fargo says, what happened with George Floyd was terrible, we have to do something about this. We believe in social justice. What I would say to them is, then reduce the racial wealth gap.
Right.
And reduce it with organizations that are going to enter into business arrangements with you, but then also that same organization that hopefully is a Black-owned business or brown-owned business is going to go and use the added resources that they've earned in the community on the front lines.
Right.
So that's the formula.
It is very much the formula, and I love how you articulate that example. That is the formula. The formula is not a big corporation just saying, hey, you Black, brown people, here's a lot of money.
That's not
and even at that, when it's done, you know, a lot of time given to, honestly, maybe some of the same kind of institutions or entities that really don't have a problem fundraising. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I love your example. That is really how you start to make changes, at least as it relates to generational wealth. And
let's talk a little bit more about the community, which I love to talk about the community, because I have a feeling that both you and we talk a little better now, but our roots are in communities that are underserved. And so when you think about STEM programs, so you have all this $1 trillion tech industry. And really Black and browns aren't really participating in. I've worked for an entire year on a particular NATO project. I have yet to see a person of color. I've seen 2 women. I'm obviously doing technical work, cyber work, but the point I'm making is when we talk about STEM programs, how do we get those hard skills to our brothers and sisters in the community? They're inspired to join the workforce, right? And they can chart their lives based on what they believe is an opportunity, not only to have the life they deserve, but also become a member of society that strengthens their own community, right?
Yeah. To me, I always boiled it down to just having access and opportunity. And I feel like that is where things are lacking. Literally a call I just got off earlier, I was, blown away that it takes an outside organization to come into some HBCUs and teach basic Excel curriculum. I want you to understand the gravity of what I'm just saying. First of all, why does a college need someone else to come in to help teach basic Excel? But why is someone in college even needing basic Excel? You should be at Guru Excel by the time you get to college. But but the problem is when we think of in our underserved communities, our Black and brown communities, that we're not giving them access to the education that they need. They're not getting awareness into career paths at an early age. College is way too late. High school is now too late. It needs to be exposed at middle school. Something else in this, I preach this a lot. We put too much pressure on the K through 12 school system. You've seen this. You've seen, teachers upset about wages and conditions and things of that sort. But schools, unfortunately, for the most part, are, failing a lot of our kids. And the reason is they're often handcuffed. There's so much bureaucracy in the school system and school boards and all this.
Are you saying it's not a good environment for learning for people from our community?
Let me say this. For someone who born with the odds stacked against them.
Right.
I believe the traditional school system is not necessarily providing enough to then level the playing field for those who already have those odds stacked. Okay. That's what I'm saying. I think some people can come into school and whatever they offer, and I won't say coast, but it's kind of like you've got a nice trajectory already set up for you.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Whereas, when we talked about earlier, some of the struggles that we have in getting in tech and things, that means we got to get exposed to it and learn it so much early. We can't wait to freshman year of high school, learn tech, and then our frat brother gives us a job. You know what I mean? That's not happening.
That's not real. Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
So the one thing that I want to add, and why I talked about the schools is, and what I really try to focus on, and what I think more people need to focus on, who are those nonprofits and those community-based organizations that are in and around same schools that are serving the same kids, whether it's after school programs, weekend, summer, whatever, that are much more nimble, and that, you can call them today or hand them a STEM-based curriculum and they'll implement it. They'll have a program up and running before tonight. You follow I'm getting at?
Not 500 meetings for several months and planning. Yeah, exactly.
Thank you. And again, back to this theme of the community, like how do we really empower those, all those leaders and stakeholders within communities and really arm them with all of them, not only STEM, but STEAM curriculum so that we can really, have people, set up for these jobs, these emerging tech. And, how many positions are we going to see here soon that involves you working in the metaverse? You know what I mean?
Exactly. No, exactly.
Yeah. So how are we, really building that pipeline for the jobs of the future, not the current jobs?
So something to food for thought. I agree with a lot of what you said. So I talked a little bit about our hip hop tech leaders program. We do an annual conference at UC Berkeley. We have C-levels come in, entertainers come in and speak and inspire the kids. It's a week-long college experience. The thing that I want to focus on about what I just said, though, we're trying to frame tech from the context of hip hop. So what do I mean by that? Well, if Jay-Z had a concert, he has to market the concert online. He has to have a website. He has to understand how to use the technology to reach the people. He has to stream the concert, baby.
Yes.
So we have development classes and training classes that kind of try to teach as much as possible from a hip hop perspective. The question I would ask to build on what you just said, though, traditional learning and non-traditional learning is not welcome in the classroom. And so you being in a leadership position, I'm not saying you have to have hip hop tech leaders, but I am telling you, I know that traditional learning will not allow you to reach some kids and get them into STEM. Yeah. So what do you do?
No, you hit the nail on it. We must be, what's the term? We must be brothers from another mother, because we've been preaching the same thing. I used to use the word trick, and somebody said, don't say that, Darrell, you're enticing the youth. But you hit the nail on the head. How do you find those different ways to entice them to start to learn those skills? You just mentioned hip hop. It's great. Something that I leverage all the time is, okay, you're a gamer. You want a game?
Right.
Like, come on over here. But let me also teach you how to develop the game. But to your point too,
exactly.
Esports. Oh, you want an esport? Okay, but let me tell you how you can run your own esports league.
Exactly.
And what is all those fundamentals behind, the entrepreneurial skills behind that, and salaries for people, and all that. We have to find the ways to connect to different populations and different youth, because everybody is gravitated and learn a different way. You hit the nail on the head. We're no longer in a world where I think we just teach, you go to math class, you go to science class, you go to history class. Like, how do you start to, I
don't even want to do that. And
nobody wants to do that. But how do you still teach those skills, but in more of use cases? Like you said, hey, you love music, you want to get into hip hop. All right, well, come learn some skills so that you can work. So if you may or may not end up being a rapper, but is there other ways that you can be
You can be the engineer for the rapper.
Exactly. So yes, I love your thinking. I agree with it 1,000%.
One last thing about change before we transition to the next topic. So we talked about having organizations on the front lines being empowered to do the work. because for me, they understand the work.
Right.
I had this really quick, brilliant young lady. She went to UC Riverside, very passionate about the community. She was Caucasian, but that's not the focus of what I'm going to say. I don't really care what color someone is as long as they're committed to helping people. But she came up with this brilliant curriculum, and she was trying to teach it to kids in Centennial High School, which is in Compton. And I tried to explain to her, I said, I've done an after-school program. You cannot teach inner city kids or kids from brown and Black communities, underserved communities, until you have some level of trust and respect.
Facts.
The reason I just gave you that example is because if an organization or a big corporation is truly committed to getting the work done, engage the organizations in the community that have the respect and the connection with the kids that have to get the benefit.
I think you were stalking a call I had the other day. What I said the same thing. The colleague was just kind of mentioning some of those roadblocks of exactly what you said. How are you, building that trust, and how do you come in? And it's kind of that pressure of showing results and impact. Almost verbatim, I say you have to start to build that trust, especially when you, like you said, when you're talking about any type of corporation, any type of large entity, that other side, someone may be thinking, okay, there's an ulterior motive, why is XYZ company coming to talk to me or talk to us? Why are they here? In that particular scenario, those kids are looking and it's like, what does this lady want? She does not look like us.
And that's what it is. That's the fact. That's all they see. And it's unfortunate, even though we know she may be well-intentioned.
Yeah. I think there's nothing wrong with it. And I think it's actually smart to just employ processes where you are working with those trusted people and have them being your advocate for what you're doing.
Yes, sir.
And that's the way you do it, because you can't have this mindset of, hey, I'm here, whether it's here working at a big company or here, I live here, thinking I'm going to tell somebody over here what they need to do and how they need
exactly.
to do. Can I bring my ideas over here, figure out how my ideas need to be morphed and changed and presented in a way that these people understand it? That
Absolutely.
is
Yes, sir. Now, I want to commend you on something that you're working on that I think is very important for the community, the Tech Accelerator program. I think the focus for you is just to increase efficiency of organizations so they can serve better and more. And scale better. So can you tell us a little bit about the work you're doing with Microsoft's Tech Accelerator program in the communities?
It's called the Nonprofit Tech Acceleration for Black and African American Communities, or NTA for short, and literally born days into our protest last summer. I'm within the philanthropies division of Microsoft, and we have been working with nonprofits before, and it was kind of say, how do we help? What can we do? And what's, not feasible is, even though we have the reach that we have, we're not getting to every Black or African American person in the country directly. That's not possible. But is it possible that we can get to every one of these community-based organizations, again, that has that trusted connection and relationship with everyone in these communities? And the answer is yes. And unfortunately, when you look at the stats where Black-led nonprofits receive unrestricted funds at a 76% smaller rate than white-led. And, for those that are listening who don't really know, okay, what does that mean? What is unrestricted funds? So most funders only want to fund the sexy stuff. I want every one of my dollars to go to notebooks or backpacks or computers or meals. Right. A lot of times funders don't want their money to go to overhead, staff, capacity, technology. So many nonprofits really seek that unrestricted funds because that's how they can start to address some of those needs, including technology.
Because the needs in the community are not sexy sometimes.
Sometimes they're not, yes. But, when these organizations aren't getting it, what they're doing is they're not working at their highest capacity. They are a little to no technology in what they're doing for operation. And I don't care if it's one nonprofit ran by an elderly lady or some of these bigger ones with, big staff, because these are people that are working with just passion. They're very selfless. And they kind of tune out the fact that I should not be spending all this time doing this manual stuff. I just need to feed the people. What we're doing with the Accelerator is kind of bridging that gap. One, by working with all of these organizations, large or small. They don't have to be solely Black led, but Black supported, and making sure that we bridge the funding gap by providing free software solutions. So not only the basics, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Teams, a lot of that productivity stuff, but also software that is helping them with all the other major aspects of them running.
Right.
From fundraising to donor management, volunteer management, grant management,
All that's critical, though. It doesn't sound like it is, but it's so critical.
It's beyond critical. If anybody runs any type of business or nonprofit, they know. So arming them with that, but then also bridging that other gap of knowing that most of them do not have an IT team, let alone an IT person. So we've staffed up what we call a concierge team of technical specialists to actually then help them implement and deploy the solutions, but then also addressing a third pillar by unlimited training on all the software through our staff. So that we're making sure that if we're putting them in a place to implement it, that they also know how to use it. And that's the mission. How do we get to as many of these organizations across the country that I said, the true heartbeat in the hood, providing these services, leveling their playing field in technology. So if we level their playing field, they can have the highest impact on their mission, whether it's serving more or serving even the same ones they're serving better. But then the last piece is back to what we're talking about with kind of the STEM education. Imagine we, through technology, uplifting these organizations that are providing like some of these education services. Mm-hmm. And now through them, they're a conduit for us to be able to bring a lot of our skilling curriculum that we have and be able to, through that now nonprofit that's at a better place, get it to those people that need it.
Absolutely. That's brilliant. And that's a very tangible way. When someone says, I care about the community, I want to help the community, this is a very tangible way. Give them capability.
Yep. We're not going in there and telling any of them, that's not how you run your organization. That's not how you need to do it. You're doing it. It's like, what? You're doing what? Okay, what do you need to do it better? That's it.
So something this will probably be a surprise to you, but I'm going to ask you for a piece of advice while everyone's listening. Okay. And that is, again, we must be brothers from another, because one of our goals is 1600. We have a 1600 National Privacy and Cybersecurity Center. I would call it a cyber accelerator, because these organizations are vulnerable to attack. Privacy is being exploited. And so we're not as big as Microsoft, but we're on a mission to use the technical expertise I have in cyber and privacy and cyber security and try to help protect the community organizations on the front lines that are doing all this great work. If you enable them, but they get hacked. So the piece of advice is, when we're rolling this program out next year, what will be some of the major stumbling blocks to kind of taking an organization, like you said, that probably has one person or two people, they know a little bit about IT, but they're just trying to do the work, right, and getting them to buy into and see a vision where they can leverage tech, in our case, cyber, to really realize the benefits and capabilities they need to better serve in this digital age, right?
Yeah.
So what would be your advice?
A couple tactics. One is scare the heck out of them. And I'm not, honestly, seriously. And you kind of mentioned, a lot of these organizations, especially nonprofits, are really susceptible to attacks nowadays. They have a lot of donor information. People know there's a lack of security. I can just go right in. Can I mention one thing really quick? You just said something key. I study cyber criminals and cyber campaigns, and people say, well, I'm not Microsoft. Why would somebody hack the Boys and Girls Club in San Francisco? It's almost like low-hanging fruit. It's like, if you're a car thief and you see a car with an alarm system that's locked under a big light, or you see a car that's completely unlocked, the windows down and the engine's running. It's nonprofits and community organizations are the car that's running. Yeah. And so they're really attractive and becoming more attractive. And like I said, it's that rush to just serve and help. There's a well-known one, Save the Children. This is all public. You can Google it. Save the Children got duped out of, I forgot how many millions, by simply someone getting in, typical phishing and whatever, and sent an email to someone else in the company and said, hey, can you process this invoice for these solar panels?
And that's so common.
Yeah, I mean, just the easiest. And, the person on the other end is like, oh, these are some solar panels that's going to this third world country that we're helping submit. You know what I mean?
Right.
So you hit the nail on the head. I'm trying to think of what other advice. I think also is just maybe just demystifying cybersecurity a little bit. It can seem intimidating and like, whoa, what do you need to do? And, people think the Matrix and all this.
It is amazing. No, I'm joking.
Yeah, no, I think really just, demystifying a little bit, just, and really making it real for them and saying, hey, especially now in this age, COVID really got us here. Your staff that you have for working remotely, people are bringing their own devices. Like, look, here's the steps that you need to do just to protect your donor data. Like, just really those simple use cases that makes sense for them, but behind the scenes, they don't really know how intricate you're going with the cybersecurity. And I think
it's a starting point. It's a starting point. Right.
Yep. It's a starting point. It's something that they can grasp, something that they can realize. And especially those that, depending on what they're doing and, if you have child data or things like that, like they want to ensure that they're protecting that. So just kind of bringing it down in a language that they can understand and you'll be fine.
I appreciate that advice. And so now to wrap up, I just want to talk about, to me, what's more important than anything we've talked about.
Okay.
And that is like who you are, what you believe, what you stand for. Because what's happening right now with tech is that it's kind of lost its way. Tech is not being used for good or to serve our communities for the most part, to make people in our communities' lives better. It's being used to generate money and profit. In the process of making profits from people in our communities, if I step on people's rights, so be it. So I guess the question for you is, as we inspire people to get into tech, where is their moral compass? What would you tell them? Listen, before you get in this tech game, understand what it should be and what it is and where you need to be as you continue on your journey. My favorite quote says, "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself."
Wow. Yeah.
So taking the longer road, maybe more adversity, but it's the right thing to do. So I guess I would like you just to kind of wrap up for us. And what is your perspective on that moral compass?
Wow, that's a tough question. And I will say for those getting into tech, especially now, I think you're just going to have to really know that there are going to be some times where you're like skirting that edge. I think it's an edge that is a little bit more in demand by the consumer than those who are producing it. And I say that to say we're definitely moving in an age where people want things as fast as possible. I think more or less they expect tools and things that you use to be, really intelligent. I definitely think as we start to see things now where at least you're getting warned that an app is tracking you and things of that sort, that is that edge. And knowing that, okay, you're coding something or you're building something that's that edge, you need to be able to put those parameters in place for those who don't want you to cross that line.
Exactly.
But also know there's some that's fine with you crossing that line. There's going to be some instances where you can just take it to wherever, and you're going to have a lot of fans that like what you're doing, because I think that is just where we are starting to head. And just,
you nailed it exactly.
Yeah, I mean, tech is just everywhere now, being using so much. It's like I just start to really know how can we really have those boundaries anymore. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, I think it's an evolving situation, right? Yeah. But I do think something that you just said is like, where are those boundaries? Where are those edges? I would encourage people getting in. I have my boundaries.
Right.
I would encourage people getting into tech to want to follow in your footsteps or someone else's footsteps, to know your boundaries.
Yes. I agree with that 1,000%. Know what you're willing to do, know what you're not willing to do. I mean, that's just going to go to your overall happiness in your job, in your career, and just know how much you really want to push the limits. As long as you kind of keep that in the forefront, you can do well in the industry. Very well.
Last question. Next year, what is your biggest target? What's the biggest thing you want to accomplish next year?
Wow.
And how can we help?
No, literally is here's the biggest thing I want to accomplish. I want to ride a little bit of the wave. And I say the wave in terms of, I don't think the news cycle changed all the way. And it's still kind of cool to, really start providing a lot of support for our Black and Brown communities. What I want to do going into next year is continue pushing the envelope, really, if anything, make this country and make the world know that, we need to continue a lot of these efforts. You follow what I'm getting at?
Right. That was the start last summer.
That was
just the start.
That was the start. Things that, people are doing right now, let those not be one-time things. Let those be things that are more permanent. And then, if what we're doing now, kind of then starts a little bit of wave, and then look at, all right, where are those other races, ethnicities, et cetera, that also can use some direct support as well. Let's do that also. Let's get rid of this haves and have-nots that this country is just so known for, in my opinion, which just really sucks.
That's one of my goals too for next year. So we Hey, Darrell, listen, appreciate the time. We fully support the things you're doing. Know that a lot of people are proud of you.
Thank you.
And inspired by your efforts. If there's anything that you ever need that we can support you on, ask us directly, please.
I'll put this on the record. Would love to, just be on a fly on the wall, the hip hop tech leader thing that you do. And just, I'm a real fan of that. And just anything that I can do to support that, that'd be really cool.
Well, I'm sure we have a speaker slot, so we'll be in touch.
All right. Sounds great. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Stay safe, brother. Okay. Happy holidays.
All right. You too. Bye-bye.